Hello and welcome back to Inside Update. Thank you for being here. Every other week, as always, we are unpacking the newest investigations from InsideInvestigator.org. Today, I am joined by Trisha Ennis and Mark E. Fitch to talk about their newest investigations. Trisha, you're going to be talking about LARPing, live action role playing in Connecticut, and Mark is going to talk about association healthcare plans, specifically some revelations about why the concept to lower healthcare costs flopped again in the 2024 legislative session. We're going to start with Trisha. I see you don't have a sword. You're not wearing armor, but
I
you
don't.
were all the same in the trenches. You're learning about this battle game. Loop us in here.
Yeah, unfortunately, my sword and knife and stuff, they're all still packed away. All my Ren Fair stuff. Yeah, I actually really wanted to do something about LARPing because it's a part of sort of like the nerdosphere that I just wasn't a part of. I'm a tabletop gamer. I go to Renaissance fairs, but for some reason I've never participated in a LARP, and I think it's because it's outside in the woods and requires a lot of physicality. So I just really wanted to understand what goes into these events. And it was actually really fun. I got to meet some people who are really passionate about what they're doing and really into the events and go out to campground in Pomfret, Connecticut, in the heat and humidity, and get eaten alive by bugs, but meet some cool people, have some fun, and learn about sort of what goes into making these big events.
That was, I mean, first of all, I guess two things. One, much deeper history. I kind of thought this was a more modern thing. There was that mid-level movie that included LARPing, like when I was a teenager. What is it, adults or something, growing up, something, a coming of age movie of some kind. But
Yeah,
this has been going on for like 40, 50 years, right?
yeah, it's been around almost as long as Dungeons and Dragons, the tabletop role playing game, and it's very much like people getting the ability to take sort of the idea of that game and play it out like where you are your character, as opposed to you just playing along on a table or in your head. And yeah, it's been a lot around since at least the early '80s. One of the gentlemen that I spoke to for the story has been doing it for about that long, and the two of them have been doing it since around the late '80s, early '90s. It's been around for a very long time. It just sort of has like, ballooned in popularity, especially with the internet. So they're not the myth, the group that I hung out with. They're not the only LARPing group in Connecticut. They just happen to be the group that I was able to get in with and talk to. But there are several others, and there are other LARPing events, and you can find out more about them online, on their websites, on certain Reddit communities, and really find the group that works for you.
It's a business, true, too, which I kind of expected. When you pitch this idea, it's like, oh, this will be interesting. We're going to learn about someone's hobby and explore the passion there. And then you came back with this thing that was like, no, no, this is full time. This is formalized in a very real way, but it is seasonal too. Like, how do they manage the ebbs and flows?
Yeah, I mean, this group in particular, it's mostly volunteer based. The majority of people who work with the group are volunteers. Even the people that run it, they have day jobs as well. They do other things, and this is something that they do on the side, mostly out of passion for it. But it is something that they're running as a business. They have to pay for the locations that they're renting out in order to play. They don't own the campground. They have to pay for insurance and liability and things like that. So everyone who participates over a weekend does pay a certain amount to participate, and you can pay more or less depending on how much you want to buy. But it does have to be seasonal, I think, in part because it gets kind of hot and gross during the summer months. And if you're out there in armor, even though the armor isn't like full plate armor, it can be chainmail, which can be heavy and sweaty, or leather, or it tends to be you want to wear long pants and sleeves so that you're not getting eaten alive by bugs as much. And it isn't necessarily breathable, even if it is foam. And part of it is, I think, safety, and also just I don't think it's very fun when it's disgusting out. So they tend to do it in the spring and fall when the weather's a little more temperate, and you're not doing it during deep freezes, and you're not doing it during 100-degree weather. So they're able to purchase things like food and pay for the location, but really they're making money in order to pay for the event itself. And for the most part, it is volunteer run, and the volunteers are very involved and they do a lot of work. They put in time in between to write the stories and to set things up, and it's a lot of time commitment, but it's mostly people who are doing it because they love it.
It's awesome. That was really cool. It's a great piece too. The Oddities series has just taken on a life of its own, and you've been able to find a lot of different spaces here. Um, Mark, any other thoughts, questions? We can take a look at association healthcare plans.
Do the Civil War reenactments count as LARPing?
Honestly, I think yes. I think that the LARPing that I went out and did, which is sort of the fantasy LARPing, is that sweet spot between like video games, Dungeons and Dragons, and Civil War reenactor or other war reenactment. I mean, you're putting on costumes, you're going out, you're playing out some kind of battle, some kind of story. The only difference I would say is that the Civil War ones, or the war reenactors in general, because we also have Revolutionary War and War of 1812 and stuff, that those are a little bit more on rails because you're playing out a specific battle. Whereas the fantasy LARP is that they have written a story and the players don't necessarily know what's going to happen. They're learning the story as it's being doled out by the organizers. So everything is a little bit more flexible, a little bit more, you don't know who's going to win, what's going to happen. But yeah, honestly, I think it's very similar. I think it's basically the same thing.
Well, I mean, kudos to them because I started doing Dungeons and Dragons with my kids this past year, and just making up these stories on the fly was exhausting. So
Yeah.
I was tired after our rounds. So
Yeah, and you never know what the players are going to do. They're going to throw you for a loop. The line I liked from one of the interviews that I did was, the story never survives first contact with the players.
Mm.
So
I can see that.
Well, I appreciate that exhaustion note, Mark. I feel like as a novelist too. I mean, you're coming up with stuff. No, I don't think anybody wants to live action role play in your horror novels. I don't mean that as an insult, just that they are wildly emotionally devastating. So credit to you. But that's it's interesting that someone even with your skill set is exhausted by that exercise.
Well, yeah, at least with the novels, I don't have to make it up on the fly. Weeks,
Very fair.
months, years.
it is an improv game as much as anything else.
Yeah, it's tough.
One last question on that. You said winners too. Is there so like there at the end of this, there's winners of these weekends? And are they
Not
sleeping out there
necessarily.
too?
They are sleeping out there. They're camping. They bring tents, and there are some cabins for people who who just like need accessibility or things like that. But they are sleeping out there for the weekend. They're going out there on Friday night and wrapping things up late on Sunday. And they're not necessarily winners, but there are like, if you're involved in it's more like all of the players are working together against the game, more than the players are fighting each other. There are some LARPs where it's a war game and you are fighting each other, like you're on different sides. I don't know if we have any of those in Connecticut, but in this case, it's more like players cooperatively playing against the game. And so usually it's set up so that the players are going to like win battles because you need to do that to advance the story. But there are people who are going to come out more on top in certain situations. You can die and come back because of like there's a whole system involved in how you like come back from the dead, or how you heal after injuries and things like that. But like, yeah, you take damage, you're fighting, you're essentially like fighting in these fantasy battles, and you don't know how it's going to turn out or how well you're going to turn out. When a character dies, they drop loot so you can gain items and gold and things that you can use to advance your player. You gain experience points. So everybody is they're on their own building their characters and sort of building their store of things, but everybody's working together to sort of fight against the enemies in the game.
Awesome. So much more intricate than I expected. Such a cool
Oh,
story.
absolutely.
Such a cool
Yeah.
story. So, all right, let's take a big jump then into something far from fantasy. This is unfortunately, or I guess according to some, this was exactly the way that they hoped it would play out. Let's talk about association healthcare plans. Mark, you dug into this. I won't preface it with anything else. Let us know what actually happened here.
Sure. So there's been a multi-year effort to try to enable business associations to join together to either purchase healthcare, health insurance, or do their own self-funded health insurance. And this is backed by, large numbers of bipartisan lawmakers, the business community, the nonprofit community. Pretty much, everybody's on board, but they keep getting stymied. And this year they really got hammered and beat down, and the legislation didn't pass. Really with the charge being led by the Commission on Racial Equity in Public Health. It's a commission, a legislative commission that was formed in 2021 with taxpayer dollars, roughly like $550,000. And their chairperson is also the head of a nonprofit organization called Health Equity Solutions. And the chairperson has always been the head of Health Equity Solutions, even though the executive directorship had changed. But they were really leading the charge. They were hammering lawmakers to not pass this bill. And their argument was that it's racist, essentially, saying that these association health plans are going to take people out of the Connecticut's health insurance exchange, Access Health CT, which has also seriously opposed these plans in the past. But really kind of targeting the members of the Black and Puerto Rican caucus, making their case that these association health plans, or MIWAs, as they're called, would essentially discriminate and further institutional racism in the healthcare industry.
That's a lot to unpack.
It is a lot to unpack.
Sorry, I almost didn't expect it to end there, because that's a lot. So it's popular with those who would use it. It's popular for those who would provide it, but the people whose salaries and healthcare are being paid for by both of those groups don't like it. So it's not going it didn't happen. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, and this is part of the issue, is that, some things that the legislators who I interviewed for this brought up. They're like, this opposition isn't coming from the public. This opposition is coming specifically from under the Capitol dome, with these taxpayer-funded groups that, keep mounting these massive defenses. I mean, Access Health CT, the Connecticut's, insurance exchange, the Obamacare insurance exchange. I mean, they've tried to kill this several years now. Last year, this year, they were doing it again. And one of their biggest reasons for doing it is, for every small group health insurance plan sold in Connecticut, they get money out of that. There's a fee attached to that goes to Access Health. So this is a matter of survival for them. And they also worry that if association health plans start up, they'll actually lose some of their customer base. And so there's that issue. And then with Health Equity Solutions and the Commission on Racial Equity in Public Health, we're not really sure what they want exactly. I mean, they keep putting out, they want to get rid of all sorts of different kinds of insurance plans that small businesses are using to lower their insurance costs, and kind of leaving them in a tight spot. They don't want the association health plans. They don't want what's called this stop loss insurance that small employers have been utilizing to try to lower their costs. Really, what they seem to be pushing for is more government-run health insurance, like pretty much a single payer option. The public option, which was a highly controversial and hard-fought plan pushed by former comptroller Kevin Lembo for a number of years. It had a lot of backing from these same groups, and so that didn't work out. They're trying with the association health plans, but these very same groups who, honestly, some of the lawmakers I spoke with, they never even heard of this commission. They never heard of the commission. They never heard of Health Equity Solutions. They never heard of, some of these people. But they were getting hammered by them, and with the accusations that these plans are racist, and some of that doesn't seem to hold up when you actually talk to some of the people involved in these plans, and doesn't quite hold up because Connecticut already allows association health plans for towns, for municipalities. So I think it's since 2012. There's a number of towns that have joined together, formed associations for the purposes of purchasing healthcare, and they use stop loss insurance, and they work with their unions to ensure that they get the best coverage and all that kind of stuff. So, really what businesses have been asking is that, hey, let us do what you're already allowing towns to do, and what the state itself does. The state is a self-insured, health plan. So yeah, it's a strange argument. It's something that's and it's interesting when you have this much bipartisan backing that the legislation fails continuously. So we'll see what happens next year. But the lead proponent of the bill, Representative Kerry Wood, she pretty much said that she was done. She said the pushback that she got and the pushback that her colleagues got was so intense that she feels like she can't run this bill again, that it wouldn't be fair to her colleagues. So we'll see what happens next year.
I'm not sure I have any other questions. That was a really great summary. Obviously, there's a lot more in the investigation itself. I mean, that quote that you just mentioned, I can never take this bill out again. It's literally the first line in the investigation for those listening. So you can pretty easily understand that's the starting point for Mark unpacking this, not the end all be all in this conversation. So as always, please go to insideinvestigator.org. Read into this. If it doesn't impact you personally, it likely impacts your neighbors, friends, and family in some way. So it is relevant, I think, to everyone in the state of Connecticut across the board. Any other closing thoughts from either of you? Anything else that you want to make a plea to the public for to make your life easier or to help move the ball forward on rooting out corruption in Connecticut?
My plea is always tips. Send us your tips.
Absolutely. Yeah. The more information, the better coming in. We're also working on something to help folks develop better tips, right? Sometimes we get those emails that are like, you should look into Hartford. And I'm like, man, that sounds great. What's happening in Hartford? It would be great if we had a little bit more details, maybe some paperwork, maybe some information that you have. As a reminder too, we also have a whistleblower portal, which lays out very specifically how we protect sources' anonymity and also some of the confusion about what anonymity might mean. Trisha, I think you and I are going to be working on some stuff to help inform and educate folks on how we can be the best newsroom in service to the people of Connecticut. So please keep an eye out for that in the future. Otherwise, thank you to everyone who is watching, listening, tuning in. This show keeps getting picked up in new places. So if you're new here, welcome. Very excited to have you. We will be back in 2 weeks. Until then, be well, stay safe, and stay informed.